The sun hung low over the desert base, bleeding amber light through the hangar's open doors. Dust clung to everything: boots, uniforms, tempers. The briefing had gone wrong hours ago, and the tension hadn't cooled since. Captain Elara Voss stood silently near the flightline map, hands clasped behind her back, as Colonel Briggs paced in front of the assembled officers. He was red-faced, barking orders that contradicted each other every few minutes. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Briggs' patience was thin, his pride thinner. He'd been in command only 6 weeks and already hated that this quiet woman had the respect of every pilot on base. She'd earned it in ways he never could, in the sky, under fire, with precision and calm that legends were built on. "Captain Voss," he snapped suddenly, "when I ask for input, I expect a response, not silence." Her eyes met his, calm as ice. "Sir, I wasn't asked a question." Laughter rippled quietly through the room. It was enough to set him off. Briggs stepped forward, boots slamming against the concrete. "You think this is funny? You think you can undermine my authority in front of my men?" "They're our men, sir," she replied evenly. "And I'm not undermining anything." Something in her tone, steady, factual, unafraid, broke him. His hand came up fast. The motion was meant to humiliate, not injure, but Elara had seen that same movement 1,000 times, on the battlefield, in survival drills, from enemies who didn't get a second chance. Before anyone processed what happened, the colonel's wrist twisted midair. There was a crack, sharp as gunfire. He screamed, dropping to his knees. His arm hung limp, bent the wrong way at the elbow. The room froze. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop. Elara took a step back, breathing steady, eyes still cold and focused. She hadn't moved with anger. It was reflex, a soldier's reflex honed through years of combat, not politics. "Medical," she called firmly, breaking the silence. 2 corpsmen rushed forward, hesitating when they realized who was on the floor. Major Darnell, the XO, finally spoke. "Captain, what in God's name?" He attempted to strike an officer, she said, her tone flat but respectful. "I responded with standard close-quarters defense protocol." The medics lifted Briggs, who was still cursing through gritted teeth. His voice cracked when he shouted, "You're finished, Voss. You hear me? Finished." Elara didn't answer. She watched as he was carried out, the other officers stepping aside, some trying not to meet her eyes. Others didn't bother hiding their awe. When the door shut, the hangar was silent again. Major Darnell rubbed a hand over his face, muttering, "God help us, the brass is going to lose their minds." Elara adjusted her uniform sleeves, unshaken. "Then I'll file my report first," she said quietly. "The truth doesn't need to shout." As she walked out into the fading sunlight, a few soldiers stood at attention, wordlessly watching her pass. One of them whispered what everyone else was thinking. "She didn't just defend herself," he said. "She defended the whole damn base." The base was silent that night, too silent. Even the hum of generators seemed hesitant, like the machinery knew something had shifted. Word had spread faster than any radio transmission ever could. Colonel Briggs tried to strike Captain Voss, and she broke his arm. Inside the operations office, the lights were dim except for the harsh glow of the overhead fluorescents. Elara sat alone at a metal desk, her report open in front of her. Every word was measured, precise, emotionless. She knew how military politics worked, truth mattered less than rank. And she had just humiliated a superior officer. Still, her pulse never wavered. The door burst open. Major Darnell entered, closing it quietly behind him. His expression was tight, somewhere between admiration and dread. "You realize what kind of storm this is going to start?" Elara didn't look up. "Yes, sir." "Then why do you look like you're about to go get a cup of coffee?" he snapped. She finished typing, then met his eyes. "Because panic doesn't help me aim straighter, sir." Darnell's mouth twitched, half a smirk, half disbelief. "You're something else, Voss." He leaned against the wall. "Briggs has already made calls to Central Command. He's demanding a court-martial. Says you assaulted him." Elara handed him a printed copy of her report. "Video feed from Hangar 3's security cameras will confirm what happened." He raised his hand first. Darnell took the paper but didn't read it yet. "You're assuming they'll even look at the footage." "They will," she said quietly. "Because they'll have to." The major hesitated. "You don't understand how high up this goes. Briggs has connections. He's one of those old-school officers who drinks whiskey with senators and calls it strategy." Elara folded her hands. Then maybe it's time someone reminded them what leadership actually looks like. He stared at her for a moment before sighing. You know, most officers would have just stood there and taken the slap. Saved their career. I didn't join to keep a career, she replied. I joined to keep people alive. The major didn't argue. He left the office without another word. 2 hours later, the inquiry began in the command conference room. 3 officers from Central Command sat at the long table, their insignia gleaming under the cold lights. Briggs sat opposite them, his arm in a sling, face pale from pain and humiliation. Elara entered without hesitation, every step measured. She saluted. Captain Elara Voss, reporting as ordered. One of the investigators, a gray-haired colonel named Anders, nodded curtly. At ease, Captain. We've reviewed your written statement. Colonel Briggs alleges you attacked him without provocation. She met his gaze calmly. That's false, sir. Briggs slammed his good hand on the table. She's lying. She's been undermining my authority since I got here. Anders raised a hand. Colonel, you'll have your chance to speak. He turned back to Elara. Captain, we've also retrieved surveillance footage from Hangar 3. Before we play it, do you have anything to add? She shook her head once. Only that I acted in self-defense and in accordance with the U.S. Armed Forces Defensive Engagement Protocol, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Anders pressed a button. The monitor flickered to life. The entire room watched as the scene unfolded exactly as it had. Briggs shouting, stepping forward, his hand rising, and then the lightning-fast movement that left him screaming on the floor. No sound, just pure clarity. When it ended, no one spoke for several seconds. Even Briggs' breathing sounded too loud. Finally, Colonel Anders leaned back. Captain, your reaction was precise. I'm trained to react, sir, she said simply. Briggs' face turned red. She broke my damn arm. Anders turned to him coolly. And you attempted to strike a subordinate officer. That's assault under the UCMJ, Colonel. The younger investigator beside him added, frankly, sir, you're lucky she didn't do worse. A few muffled laughs came from the back of the room, junior officers who hadn't been allowed to sit silently through the hearing but couldn't hide their awe. Briggs stood up, furious. You can't let her get away with this. She's insubordinate. Anders cut him off. Colonel Briggs, this board is recommending immediate administrative leave pending further investigation into your conduct. The color drained from Briggs' face. He looked around the room, realizing no one would defend him. Not this time. Elara didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply saluted, turned on her heel, and walked out. Outside, the desert wind carried dust across the tarmac, whispering through the hangars. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of violet and gold. As Elara stepped into the open, a small group of mechanics and pilots nearby straightened instinctively. One of them, the youngest, probably no more than 20, snapped to attention. Ma'am, he said, voice uncertain but proud. Elara paused. At ease, Sergeant. He hesitated, then asked quietly, Ma'am, is it true you broke the colonel's arm? She looked at him for a long moment. It's true, I defended myself. The others exchanged glances, half in awe, half in disbelief. The young sergeant smiled slightly. Guess the stories about you were true then. She tilted her head. What stories? That you're not just a pilot, he said. You're the one they call Iron Falcon, the one who took down that enemy convoy in Afghanistan with no support. Elara didn't confirm or deny. Stories grow in the telling, Sergeant. What matters is how you act when no one's watching. She started walking again, the wind tugging at her uniform. Behind her, the group watched in silence, until Darnell appeared from the side entrance, falling into step beside her. You just made history, he said quietly. History doesn't matter, she replied. Discipline does. He glanced at her sideways. Still, everyone on this base will sleep easier tonight. You stood up to him when no one else could. She looked ahead, eyes on the flightline lights glowing in the distance. I didn't stand up to him, Major. I stood up for the uniform. They stopped at the hangar where her jet sat in the dark, its sleek frame reflecting the faint moonlight. She rested a hand on the cool metal of the wing. You'll fly again soon? Darnell asked. She nodded. As soon as command clears me. He exhaled. They'd be fools not to. Elara turned toward him, her expression softening for the first time that night. You know, Major, leadership isn't about control. It's about restraint. Maybe the brass will remember that someday. With that, she climbed the ladder up to her cockpit, settling into the seat as though the day's chaos hadn't happened at all. The engines whined to life, a low growl building into a roar that echoed through the base. Soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch the jet taxi to the runway. As the afterburners ignited and the F-22 lifted into the desert night, one of the soldiers watching whispered under his breath, half in awe, half in disbelief. She didn't just break his arm. He shook his head slowly. She broke the chain of fear.